Thanks, Councillor Clark. We'll continue, and Dave again. Thank you.
Our rate revenue for the last instalment, that's dated the 31st of May, is in the vicinity of 8 million. I would believe that we will have some 10 to 15% unable to make this instalment, so around 1 million will not be received, and we know what this will do to our bottom line. As I walked along Murphy Street last week, I did a count of businesses and shops on the western side. There are 46 buildings between Hollywood's and the Justice Department. Of these, 3 are government occupied. There are 8 vacant, 7 food shops with only 3 operating, a bank, a chemist, a hearing service, 2 jewellers, 1 open, 1 hotel which is closed, and 22 apparel, gift shops and miscellaneous, of which 5 were closed and 5 on restricted hours. And yet until yesterday's Chronicle article attributed to Helen Haynes, we were told that things were going along fine in Wangaratta. I am personally scared stiff about COVID-19 and have been to the supermarket twice in the last 6 weeks. I've been through a world war where employment was 12%, grown up in a society where rationing of food was the norm, and seen people begging for food scraps. I do read the newspapers to try and keep myself current, and note where 1 in 10 of all others in this room have felt depressed in the last month, according to the ABS. I will make my comments on hopefully a revised budget before the community consultation has taken place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Benton.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do sympathise with Councillor Clark's comments, but I am afraid over my lifetime, we in the primary industry have gone through a demise in the livestock industry in the 81. We've gone through a wool recession in the 90s. We went through deep dairy deregulation, and there wasn't any at that time sympathy towards those industries in relationship, and it took a long time to come out of some of those. I do believe that we've got to deal with the figures that we've got in front of us. We have got given time, if these facts and figures can be brought forward by the 31st June with the rate delayment, but I still believe we've really got to make sure we're going ahead, and we won't be some consistency in the planning ahead of what the figures we've got in front. I'm very sympathetic with what we've put in front. I think it shows that we are very sympathetic in trying to handle some of the pressures out there. But I do not believe that we can just wait and hope to God that we're going to get figures later on. We've got to work with what we've got. So I'm going to support the budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Councillor Cody, you had something to say? No? Councillor Bustle, you go first.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure everybody's very clear in the community that this is a draft budget and a draft it is. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curry.
I think Ken makes some very good points, but the one thing that we've got to keep reminding ourselves is we need to set a direction for the way forward. Yes, things are going to change, which is why we have the ability to review and revise and do what we've got to do. At this stage, with the information that we've got on hand, we are putting forward a budget that we believe, well, we actually know that will change, but it is still a clear direction of where we're heading. And it is our job to make sure that the council staff know where we're heading, and if we have to make adjustments along the way, then we make them. But with the information that we have now, we're trying to show a direction, and we're going to commit to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Just like to say a few words myself. When developing this draft budget, Council had one focus. We have been working on this budget for a while, but as soon as the COVID hit, that was our focus on ensuring that we can help those in most financial need. We've already introduced a range of measures aimed at relieving financial pressure for those in need face, including extending the due date for the 4th quarter of rates and offering flexible payment options. Our message is clear: if you need help, contact us. We know from our initial financial relief measures that the COVID-19 has impacted some much more than others. Ensuring Council remains strong, in a strong financial position and continues to provide essential services means we can help those people most in need. The most meaningful assistance Council can offer right now is giving those in financial need access to our hardship policy. The broader community assistance Council can offer right now comes in the form of continuing our capital projects, which we know will drive economic growth. In the next year, we will have a regional aquatic centre, a revitalised railway precinct, and a regional play space down at Apex Park. These projects provide employment during construction and then attract visitors and investment when complete. Local councils, especially country, I feel, are always the hardest hit by funding, especially funding from the state. We have huge areas to maintain and not the population to finance it. I hear of other councils through my mayoral network association that may be considering a 0% increase on their rates. And to me, and as stated by them, that in the coming years, that could end up being a 4 to 6%, asking for above the rate cap in years to come. Our rate cap at 2.5, we're now down to 2%, is certainly better. Tonight we're placing a draft budget on exhibition and inviting comment from the community. Just as there is a diverse opinions among councils, we will also be diverse opinions in the public. We welcome all views. My view is that the budget allows us to help those in need, and that's why I'm endorsing this for public exhibition. Thank you. Councillor Fuller, did you need to end off?
I'd just like to end by urging those that are offering feedback to make it positive, to be constructive in the feedback, and to work together cooperatively with us to find solutions.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
Vote recorded against, please.
Certainly. Councillor Clark's vote of no. I'm not endorsing. Thank you, Sarah. 13.3.
Okay, so 13.3 is the quarterly finance report. So this report is presented to Council to provide a quarterly progress status report on Council's financial performance for the 9 months ended the 31st of March 2020. Overall, Council's performance was better than expected during that time, with a year-to-date surplus of $10.9 million. As at the end of March, Council had also spent $20.7 million on capital works against a revised budget of $29.9 million, although it should be noted that at the end of the third quarter, a further $26.9 million of commitments had also already been allocated against that capital works programme. The report details the favourable and unfavourable movements of that previous quarter. I guess in part in relation to Councillor Clark's comments, I would also comment on the financial impacts of COVID-19 as we look forward to the next quarter, which do indeed have a more immediate effect on our cash flows. So looking ahead, we've identified over $500,000 of lost or deferred revenue for the last quarter of this year. That includes the impact of both the closure of certain council services due to the COVID-19 restrictions, and also the funding of community support package measures that were put in place on the 8th of April. Some of the closure of our services relates to, for example, the Wangaratta Performing Arts and Convention Centre and the Indoor Sports and Aquatics Centre, reduced receipt of fees and charges such as for parking and the commercial waste collection, where we're allowing increased flexibility for businesses who may not be trading or may have reduced trading and therefore less waste that needs collection. Reduced receipt of fees and charges, again relating to that, and individual finance assistance support such as payment arrangements for lease and licences where that help has been requested. Again, as Councillor Clark mentioned, we do have about $8 million also coming due in rates notices and associated charges for this fourth quarter, and that due date has been extended to the 30th of June. Again, that gives residents and businesses a bit more time to access the state and federal financial assistance that's recently been announced. Those rates notices have now been sent out, and we will monitor closely the repayment rates to understand any further financial impact. And currently we're working on an assumption that we think 15% may struggle to pay. So far, as of Friday, we've had 21 inquiries of individuals seeking financial assistance. So at this point we're well below that 15%, but we'll see how that develops over the coming weeks. Again, I'd just say again to encourage anyone in financial need and struggling to pay rates to access that government financial support and to get in touch with council to put a personalised repayment plan in place. The recommendation for this report, and again, as on the screen and in the agenda papers, asks council to note the quarterly finance report and the councillor expenses report. It also seeks authorisation for the CEO to spend up to $200,000 to ensure the ongoing delivery of projects and services to address any increased costs or lost revenue specifically due to COVID-19. And lastly, it seeks authorisation for a capital works budget transfer between the aquatics and railway precinct projects with no net increase to the overall capital works budget. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. There is no questions from the gallery on this one. So, Councillor Clark, would you move the motion? Yep, seconder. Councillor Benton, would you like to talk? No. Any other councillor like to talk on the motion? No. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to 14.1. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. This report is presented to Council tonight in regards to the final presentation of the walking and cycling strategy. So this strategy was presented to Council as a draft earlier in the year and has been placed out for community review. The draft was developed on the back of significant work that our team here at Council did with the community around understanding the needs and priorities for people in terms of walking and cycling, not just in our urban environment here in Wangaratta, but in our rural communities as well. So following that extensive piece of work with our community and the understanding of priorities and some of the gaps that existed, a draft was developed and presented out to the community. We had 72 submissions made to Council around that draft strategy, and they are all summarised in an attachment within the report and have been incorporated appropriately within the revised version that's presented to Council tonight. So the recommendation to Council is that Council acknowledges the feedback that was received in the public exhibition period and that Council endorses the final walking and cycling strategy.
Thank you, Jamie. There is a question from the public, which I will answer as well. So it's a pretty easy one. That when, and I will state this question, thank you to him too, to John Griffiths, who I know has been a great campaigner on the walking and cycling strategy. The walking and cycling strategy is being, when will the final pedestrian and cycling strategy be released and then go to Council for a final comment? Well, John, the walking and cycling strategy is happening right now. So hopefully it will be adopted by councillors tonight, very shortly once we get a mover and a seconder and see how we go from there. Thank you for your question. So can I have a mover please for the Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Fuller. Would anybody like to speak on the recommendation moving forward? Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I just want to thank the community members who took the time to comment and give us the feedback. I think it's fantastic. This is a real positive for Wangaratta, and as I've made a comment a bit earlier, it's great to see how many people are exercising at the moment. I think that's a positive for COVID-19. I think endorsing this strategy really helps with our paths and things like that. So thank you again. Thank you,
Councillor Fitzpatrick. Would anybody else like to talk on the recommendation? I'll just say something as a cyclist riding all these paths with my kids and scooting and walking and all this is a great thing that a lot of these other municipal areas don't have. So this is a great strategy moving forward to expand on our pathways, etc., for the years ahead. So thank you to the great work by council here on this one. So if there's no other, Councillor Fitzpatrick, you didn't want to say anything further. There's nobody else. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Jamie. Alan Clark. Thank you, Alan. Infrastructure Services. The first one, Brendan, did you need to step out for this one? Please state your conflict again.
I don't need to step out, but I do need to declare a conflict of interest in this one, in that I am a director on the board of Procurement Australia.
That's right, thank you. And the reason why Brendan doesn't need to step out, he doesn't vote, so he doesn't need to step out for this. So thank you, Brendan. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So this report's presented to Council to consider awarding the small market and large market electricity agreements. So Procurement Australia for some years now have been going out to market, representing many councils around Australia. It gives them massive buying power, and as a result we get very attractive unit rates. And it's worth noting that for the 3 years, for the next 3 years, the unit rates drop each year, so if we use the same amount of electricity, our overall bills will be reducing. So the recommendation tonight is that Council award the small market and large market electricity agreements for ERM Power Retail for the financial years 2021-22 and 22-23, and to authorises the CEO to sign such documents.
Thank you, Alan. There's no questions from the gallery, so going to have a mover please on this. Councillor Clark and Councillor Benson. Would anybody like to talk in relation to this? No? Okay, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Alan Clark. 15.2.
So this report's presented to Council to consider endorsing the draft Wangaratta Park Master Plan to be advertised for public exhibition. So Wangaratta Park is a home to multiple sporting and community groups based around the Oval with the footy and cricket, the Bowls Club, the Ed Tippett Pavilion, and indeed the old Olympic pool site. So the master plan looks to set up a plan for that precinct servicing all of these user groups for many years to come. There's already been a lot of consultation with this plan, with all the different user groups and 3 public community sessions. This takes it out to the community once again on the broadest possible scale. So the recommendation tonight is that we place the draft Wangaratta Park Master Plan on public exhibition, seeking feedback from the community and stakeholders until close of business on Friday the 5th of June 2020. And if no submissions requesting changes to the policy are received, adopts the Wangaratta Park Master Plan without further resolution.
Thank you, Alan. There's no questions from the gallery on this one. Can I have a mover again? Councillor Fuller, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Any councillor like to talk on this motion? No? Okay, all those in favour of the motion? Sorry, did you have one, Dave? Sorry? You wanted to talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Got to raise your hand so I can see it.
I did. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is an exciting development for Wangaratta Park, having played cricket there for many, many years and seen it be used more and more by bodies, and we seem to be able to keep that in fairly good nick, but the services around it are not very good, and we need to get a master plan to look for the next 20 years. So I'm very happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I would agree with you on that. It's been a bit shabby over the years, and with more sporting groups wanting to use ovals, we're going to be short on good play-space areas like this. So this is going to be a great facility in years to come, and it allows us to apply for grant funding. Without a master plan, we may as well never apply for funding on this. So a good job. So I'll, if there's nobody else to speak, Councillor Fuller, you didn't want to finish, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And the motion is carried. 15.4, thanks Alan.
So this report's presented to Council as a result of a petition being tabled at the last ordinary meeting of Council. The petition was seeking Council to construct a footpath down the eastern side of Kanana Crescent in Wangaratta. Now, we have a long list of footpaths that we wish to construct in Wangaratta, and to give them a fair showing, we have a prioritisation system based on 6 criteria. When we score Kanana Crescent, it sits 45th overall on our list of footpaths. That probably means it's 10 or 12 years out, but we believe is a little bit more justification for this footpath to accelerate up the list, because there's clear evidence that people are using this as a fairly significant route at the moment. So whilst we're not recommending it jumps into year one, we're recommending it jumps into the 5-year program, and how soon that is constructed will then depend on how much money we put in the budget each year. So the recommendation tonight is that Council include the construction of a path on the east side of Kanana Crescent to provide missing link connectivity for residents through the bottom of Rangeview Crescent directly to the Wangaratta West Kindergarten and the Appin Park Athletics Complex into the 5-year detailed capital works program between 2021 and 2026, and that we respond to the first signatory with details of the resolution of Council.
Thank you, Alan Clark.
I just have a question, Mr. Chairman. Which part of Rangeview are we talking about? From Appin Street or from halfway along Kanana Crescent?
We're talking about the footpath going along Kanana Crescent, the full length of Kanana Crescent.
From Appin Street all the way around to Orkney Street. So it will run past opposite the Rangeview does also go in from Rangeview does come into Kanana Crescent about halfway along. So we'll go past that, but on the opposite side of the road.
So it's all the way back to Appin Street?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick, seconder, please. Councillor Clark. Would any other councillor like to talk on this motion? Nope, thank you. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Alan.
So this next report is presented to Council to consider awarding a contract for the bank stabilisation work beneath bridges on Hodgson Creek. So in December 2018, the major storm that went through the Tarrawingi area caused significant damage to 4 bridges. In fact, 2 were totally destroyed. Those 2 are on Kays Road and Farmers Road are being reconstructed at the moment. The work on these 2 bridges on Dickens Road and Eldorado Tarrawingi Road is the last piece of work to complete the repairs on these bridges. The works are fully funded out of the National Disaster Financial Assistance Program, and we wish to award this contract to finalise this piece of work.
Thank you, Alan. There's no questions from the gallery. Can I have a motion put forward, please? A mover, Councillor Benton and Councillor Bussell, to second it. Would any councillor like to talk on this motion? No, thank you. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Alan Clark, could you please declare the price?
$621,497 exclusive of GST.
Thank you, Alan. Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. 16.1 is the planning scheme, planning policy framework translation 55. When you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item's about recent work undertaken by the Victorian State Government under the Smart Planning Program to translate our current municipal strategic statement and local planning policy framework contained within our planning scheme into a new planning policy framework. This program of work falls under the Smart Planning banner within state government, and our officers have been working closely with the state government officers since late 2018 to translate our policy into this new structure. It is a policy neutral translation, so we are not gaining any new policy or not losing any policy. It's about structuring the policy in a way that makes it easier to use. So that Smart Planning Program is all about making the planning system easier to use. In terms of the recommendation tonight, it's on the screen and it's also contained within the agenda. Council officers recommend that Council resolve to support the new format planning policy framework for the Wangaratta planning scheme, subject to the incorporation of the changes outlined in attachment 1. So during that process of working with the state government, we've been able to resolve most of the issues in the translation, but there are a few remaining ones, and attachment 1 contains details about those. They are mostly very minor wording changes, but there are also some more significant issues in there relating to sunset clauses, and that's all detailed in that attachment. So we are asking Council to support the changes, subject to further changes being incorporated later on, and those are detailed in attachment 1.
Thank you, Stephen. Can I have a mover, please? If there are no questions, Councillor Benton, a second to Councillor Bussell. Are there any questions or any statements from councillors on this matter? This is a fairly straightforward one where it's a neutral policy that way, so I'll put the motion to a vote. Sorry, Councillor Bussell. Oh, sorry, all those in favour? I thought you were pointing. Did you want to talk? Sorry, Harv. We'll go back, we'll exclude that vote and we'll come back and vote again if that's correct policy. Harv.
No, really, it's just good that we are starting to get some sort of language that is going to be understood, and planning for many, many years, I believe, has been too onerous in relationship to even people that have studied it to understand it completely. And it's a quagmire, quite frankly, for the average citizen to understand, but this goes some way to be able to do that. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Mayor.
Great comments, thank you, Harvey. Once again, I'll put that motion to a vote to be cleared. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you, Dave. It's when you vote, Dave, you point. Okay, thank you. Stephen, the planning application for the development of a display sign.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about the planning board application for the development and display of a major promotion sign and associated construction of a parapet and skirting board at Unit 522A Tone Road, Wangaratta. The proposed plans, so the plans of what's being proposed are attached to the agenda. Formal notice of the application was given as required by the Planning Environment Act, and as a result, we, at the time of writing this report, we received 5 objections to the proposal. The proposal has been assessed against the provisions of the planning scheme, or at least the relevant provisions of the planning scheme, and a full officer's assessment can be seen at attachment 2. The officer's recommendation is on the screen and included in the agenda, and that is that council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the permit, and that's on the grounds of the proposal not being supported by local policy, the proposal not being supported by state policy, that the proposal would cause visual detriment and is inconsistent with the character of the local area, and the proposal is inconsistent with the objectives of the Wangaratta Industrial Land Use Strategy.
Thank you, Stephen. There's no questions from the gallery on this one. Can I have a mover? Yep. Councillor Clark, and a seconder? Councillor Benton, I just got your whole finger there. Would you like to talk, Councillor Clark, please?
Yes, this is the second application we've had for something in this vicinity, right on the major corner, and I just believe that this would be not the right thing to do in that series of workshops and buildings that are there. That it's not something we should be looking at approving, and I'm very happy to move the recommendation from the officers.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, any other questions or statements from councillors? Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 12 months ago, I would have agreed with Councillor Clark. But given COVID-19, business has been tipped upside down in this land. I can't possibly vote with this because our businesses are going to need every bit of advertising they can possibly get to keep going after all this. And I don't believe we can do business as usual. And I believe some of our long-term strategies no longer apply. So I'll be voting against the motion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Can I just ask two questions before I let Councillor Clark close? One question to Director Swart. Could you just tell for the interested people there, the public, that why has this been brought to a council meeting for councillors to decide rather than just being approved under delegation?
So the delegations allow us to make decisions at officers level if we have less than 3 objections. In this case, we received 5 objections, and therefore it's in front of council to make a decision.
Thank you, Stephen. The other question is to the councillors. Did any councillor hear from the applicant? No? Great. That's all I wanted to know. Councillor Clark, before you go, would anybody else like to speak prior to Councillor Clark closing? No? Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Mr Mayor, I just want to say that I don't believe that it's going to be local advertising. I've heard of none of our industrial people or our commercial people who've been approached to put any signage on that sign. And I think it's for out of towners, and they'll advertise what they like.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? The motion is carried. Thanks, Stephen. 16.3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about a planning permit application for a 2-lot subdivision or a dwelling excision and the creation of a carriageway easement at 181 Waitons Road, East Wangaratta. The lot is within the farming zone, and the proposal will create 1 lot containing a dwelling of just under 1 hectare, and the balance of the lot would be about close to 50 hectares, well, sorry, 48 hectares. As I mentioned, a carriageway easement is proposed to provide access to the dwelling and the new lot, and the easement will allow owners of both lots to use the existing driveway. The proposal is included in the attachment to the report, so there's a plan attached. The proposal was advertised as required under the Planning Environment Act, and we didn't get any objections or submissions to this proposal. Proposal has been assessed as under the Planning Environment Act and also the relevant provisions of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme. The officer's recommendation is on the screen and contained within the agenda, and that is that council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the planning permit application, and there's a number of grounds listed there. That includes inconsistency with state and regional policy, inconsistency with council local policy, and it's also not supported by local and state strategic planning documents.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Benton.
Thanks, Councillor. Mr Mayor, I wish to move an alternate motion that council grant the planning permit with respect to the planning permit application PINAP 19233 for the subdivision at 181 Waitons Road, East Wangaratta, subject to the conditions listed below in accordance with the endorsed plans. The major alteration, I believe, in the conditions here is the 173 agreement that limits any other conduct that is in the report here that allows no more than what is there now. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll just clear that up. It was 188 Whitens Road, not 181 Whitens Road. I think you said 181 half.
Sorry, if I can just make a comment. I think it's, it's 181. The documentation of the alternate motion is incorrect, so it's 181.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a seconder? We've got a mover. Councillor Bussell will second that motion. There are no questions from the gallery, so councillors, please, would you like to say your piece? Councillor Fuller.
What Councillor Benton.
Oh, sorry, as the mover, yes, councillor Benton. Did you want to talk first?
As long as I don't close the debate. I just would like to know, and I've said this many times at this table, is in the agricultural industry, the density of that area is really related to the density of dwellings out there, and there's going to be no more than what is there now. It does allow for a succession plan to continue in that family out there. So it does help, in my opinion, agriculture. Agriculture is going to have people out there to do that. I think in many ways, and I go back to our rural land strategy where we come back to the 40 hectare limit for one dwelling per 40 hectares. This actually encourages it and goes over. There'll be one allotment there greater than 40 hectares, so that we will not be able to have a house built on that in future. So it restricts the development under the planning scheme. So that's why I'd like to support this motion or councils to support it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Benton. Councillor Fuller now. Sorry.
I would just like to touch on the need for potential advocacy and changing this at a state level in regards to succession planning, the changing climate of agriculture and families, and the need to better prepare on a broader level, not just our municipality, in regards to succession planning for these type of situations.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Bustle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this subdivision is for succession planning to give a young family member a start in life. So it is all about farming on a family farm. And Mr. Mayor, our economy has been tipped upside down, and I believe the agricultural sector will be the saviour for our country. Because it has rained across Australia at the same time as COVID-19, now this does not mean that farmers are going to make much more money, but it means they produce a lot more produce, of which, when it leaves the farm gate, a lot of people get to value add along the food chain. And that's where money is made. So now we live in a different economic world. We at council can't do business as it was, I believe. Any opportunity to help our farmers cut costs, produce product more efficiently, I'll do my best to help. This subdivision will be good for this family and good for the economy, and I urge my colleagues to support Councillor Benton's motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Bustle. I too would like to reiterate the thoughts of councillor Benton and councillor Bustle. Things are certainly different and have been for a long time. It's not changing the general farming prospect out there of one farm or one dwelling per 100 acres. If it were up to me, I'd change that one too. But I know I'm fighting a losing battle on that one, and would allow another dwelling on that further 48 hectares available. I strongly believe that people buy in farm zones, and every property should have when subdivided off a 173, to make aware to the person buying it that they are buying in a farm zone, and certain farming processes will go on around them. But anyway, is there anybody else that would like to talk? Councillor Curry.
I believe this is the third time this has come to us, obviously on different matters, and I'm going to reiterate what I've said the first two times. And that is that we have rules and we have guidelines, and our council do our best to stick within the lines, because when we start to blur those lines and we start to make up our own mind, we set precedences, and therefore allowing people to argue outside of the rules that we try and stick within. The rules are there, it's up to us. As I said before, that I believe in Dave's word that we should be going and trying to make rules and change those rules. But if those rules are there, then we should be abiding by them. It's pretty consistent. We don't turn around and say, oh, we've got 100 kilometres an hour, but I'm late for a meeting, let's do 110 and get there. We shouldn't be making rules outside what are there. If we are, we should lobby them, and that's our job. Not to be able to turn around and bend them and break them. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor Curry. Councillor Benton, did you want to finish, or are you Want to rebut anybody there?
All I was saying in answer to some of the suggestions being put forward, that the rules and guidelines have been put there, and unless until the situation, we have got the ability to be able to be flexible. If we are able to be flexible and respond to the community, we wouldn't be here. All we have is a rubber stamp. And I think we've got to be able to work with the community, what's out there. And it did state very, very clearly in the Rural Land Strategy study that I sat on and Councillor Buzzell sat on, that we were able to accommodate, if there needed be, a dwelling on another allotment. That was there. We discussed it and we took 6 months over that twag, and I will reiterate, we reduced the submissions to that Rural Land Strategy from 400 down to about 80 submissions. So we must have been doing something for the community, Mr. Mayor, in trying to address their problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buzzell. Benton. You haven't done that one for a while. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the alternate recommendation by Councillor Benton, the motion is carried. 16.4, Stephen, contract for provision of environmental services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about the provision of environmental health services here at Council. Council has a statutory obligation to provide a range of environmental health services under a number of acts, including the Food Act, the Residential Tenancies Act, Environmental Protection Act and the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. Environmental health services include food safety assessments, business registrations, compliance in terms of carrying parks and rooming houses, domestic wastewater management, public health protection, health information and infectious diseases control. In recent years, Council's environmental health services have been delivered by a Council environmental health officer in combination with a contractor. And then very recently, we moved to a situation where the service was delivered by contractors only after the resignation of Council's environmental health officer. In the last few months, Council officers have been undertaking an extensive recruitment process to try and attract new environmental health officers onto our staff, but that hasn't been successful. So this report is presented to Council to, I suppose, to get a result out of a tender process that we undertook. And the recommendation is on the screen and included, well, it's not on the screen, but it's included in the agenda. And that is that Council award contract number 24508 for the provision of environmental health services to Kerner Environmental Services, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal documents for that contract, and discloses the contract price for the contract.
Thank you, Stephen. There are no questions from the gallery on this, so can I have a mover, please? Councillor Clark and Councillor Fuller to second. Would any councillor like to talk on this motion? Councillor Clark? You're okay? Councillor Fuller?
Just looking forward to the opportunity to develop some of these skills in-house, both here but also around our region, to assist our smaller neighbours who may require these in the future down the track.
Thank you, David. I also look at the process in which we was quite arduous in trying to find the right person for this job, and it's very, very hard to find to fill this position. So the way moving forward with not having these services is certainly the best way. We did go through an arduous campaign to try and reduce costs and make sure that we got the right people for the job. So thank you to the people in your department, Stephen, that did that. Councillor Clark, would you like to close? Councillor Bent, did you want to talk? No. As Councillor Clark being the mover, you're closing now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that this is an area where we should be pursuing getting a trainee inserted somewhere. COVID-19 is not the right time to be looking at additional staff, but we've been struggling for a long time to have an environmental health officer, and I think that we should take a bit of issue and start looking for how we can put a trainee in there under the contract and eventually be qualified to look after themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll go on to special committee reports. I'll hand it over to yes. Oh, sorry, the contract price. Sorry, Stephen.
Yes, so the contract price is $312,964.75, excluding GST.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, I'll continue. Thanks, Councillor Bustle, for that. 18.1 and 19.1 we could roll together for the Record Assembly of Councils and Advisory Committee reports and Audit Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Chair. We have a report from the Chair of the Audit Advisory Committee and Audit Advisory Committee meeting minutes from the 17th of March and a series of Assemblies of Council and Advisory Committee reports through March and April, both for Council's consideration and noting.
Thank you again. No questions from the gallery, and I need a mover, Councillor Fuller and Councillor Fitzpatrick. Does anyone need to talk on this? Councillor Fuller.
Just COVID-19 lends itself to allow us to take this opportunity while our advisory committees can't meet to potentially review the way in which they operate, how we utilise the general public to come back to us and to consult panel style or something in a different manner that potentially would assist us in a greater level. So I see that as an opportunity coming out of these lack of meetings that we're having at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. If there's no other questions, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour, the motion is carried. Continuing through the meeting, we're nearly at the end. There's no notice of motion, no urgent business time, but there is public question time, and we do have two questions that I will read as follows. The first one is from Brian Fox, and the public question is, there's two from Brian, as he's allowed. Has Council developed a budget for the operations of the Bar Reserve Swimming and Fitness Complex, including cash flows? If the answer is no, when will this be available to the general public? If the answer is yes, is this document available to the general public? Brendan.
Thanks, Chair. There was a very detailed business case and plan that went to Council as part of a confidential report and some confidential attachments in December last year. Being confidential, they are not available for the public. The draft budget that's now going out on display as a result of tonight's resolution is based very closely on that report that was considered by Council, so there is information publicly available as part of the budget on that. We will obviously monitor that once we start to operate that facility in November this year, and those detailed budgets will be adjusted as we go, and the normal level of detail will be provided as part of our regular reporting.
Thank you, Brendan. Second question from Brian again is, given the corona pandemic economic downturn in every township and tourist business within the rural city of Wangaratta, is Council contemplating delaying some infrastructure works, including the construction of the children's garden on the site now known as the decommissioned Wangaratta swimming pool?
So I think we've made reference, Chair, a number of occasions tonight to being painfully aware of the situation created by COVID-19. If we look to the 19-20 budget first, we as an exec team are meeting a couple of times a week to review the current year's budget and to consider what things can be deferred or put on hold in an attempt to reduce costs as much as possible. And then to put ourselves in a position to be able to provide financial relief to those who are experiencing hardship and need support. That includes the capital works budget, and at the moment we've deferred or stopped around $2.5 to $3 million of CapEx to do exactly what Brian is asking. The children's garden is not one of those projects. We had already entered into a contract for those works and are unable to not proceed with them. We did consider whether we put that on hold or try and get out of the contract, but at the end of the day we would pay penalties for doing that, and our view was we were better to proceed with the project rather than pay unnecessary penalty. I will would say it's a bit of a balance. We are deferring what we can and stopping what we can, but it is also important that some of those projects go ahead because those capital works projects do provide important employment opportunities for local contractors and workers. Many people work on projects within our capital works program, so it is an important role that we play to provide those projects and the opportunity for local contractors and people to be involved in those works.
Thank you, Brendan. I do also have a question from John David Griffiths, and only the one question, so I'll read it and also answer the question. With summer becoming hotter, European cities and now Melbourne are looking at ways to modify ambient heat reflected from hard surfaces. Native creepers and shady trees are being planted. What does Council think about a major plan to see a greening of Wangaratta, and is there any such plan? Thank you, John, for your question. So at a strategic level, a few councils' strategies and plans include discussions about greening the city to avoid the heating effect mentioned and increasing the number of trees and other plants in the municipality. They include the Central Activities Area Urban Design Framework, which talks about greening areas without increasing bushfire risk. 2, the CBD Master Plan, which includes a priority area for greening the streets, which looks at the amount of trees, green space, gardens, etc. The Environmental Sustainability Strategy, which includes a measure for increasing the overall vegetation cover in the municipality. Target is a net increase of 2,000 plants per annum, and we plant between 7,000 and 9,000 trees every year. In terms of street trees, Council plants a significant number of infill trees every year and aims to have a tree at every house in 10 years. We also do regular work on renewals. Our significant infrastructure upgrade and streetscape projects include consideration on how more green areas can be introduced. Recent examples are the Oven Street upgrade projects where additional trees were incorporated, and the railway precinct where all replacing large areas of dark and hard surfaces with planted areas. Council's also supported the Greening Wangaratta project, initiated by Wangaratta Land Care and Sustainability Group through the Community Grants Program. The project is aiming to increase tree canopy covering residential subdivisions by supplying residents with tree vouchers for use on their own properties. Looking to the future, Council is participating in the Sustainable Design Assessment in the Planning Process project, which looks at assessment matrix of urban heat in its framework and how subdivision designs can and should demonstrate the reduction in heat island effect. So thank you, John. I hope that answers your questions. If there's no questions from councillors, we will come to the closure of the meeting. But before we do, to everybody in Wangaratta, let's not shut up shop. Let's keep striving. I've been talking to a number of the businesses doing some business videos, and they're all going okay. They're getting by, and they're looking forward to getting back to full business and supporting their local community. They're surviving without too many of them having to reduce staff. The federal government with the JobKeeper and Job Seeker programs have certainly helped in relation to this, and hopefully when everybody's back at work that everyone will be just that, back at work. Employees that were stood down and on the JobKeeper program, that will continue. I'd also like to thank the Wangaratta people for doing the great job that they've been doing over the time in social isolating. We wait for the government announcement, I think Brendan, May the 11th, of when the state government will hopefully allow us to visit our friends and get back to being part of the community. I'd like to thank all the business owners for respecting those social distancing laws over the time, and I urge all Wangaratta people, shop, buy locally, online, to local businesses. Thank you to everyone and good night. Councillor Clark.
I just want to mention that I happened to listen to the Prime Minister's speech today, and he said 1 million people will have lost their jobs. 1 million of our population are not going to have a job to go back to. That's frightening.
It is frightening, and we hope that when things get back on track, those 1 million or so can get back to work as well. And we don't know how it's going to happen, but every government's doing what they can to do, every form of government, to make sure that we get back on track quickly. So thank you to everyone. Have a great night. Special thanks to Rebecca and to Jess. Sorry, Jess. And to Jess for being here tonight. I should know it very well. Thank you, Jess and Beck, and thank you to all the corporate management team for coming from your homes tonight to be here and to run a successful council meeting. Thank you to all our councillors and our CEO. Thank you very much. Good night.